Hey everyone, welcome again to the Greatness Movement podcast. I'm your host, Kenny Weiss. I'm a life coach, speaker, author, and founder of the Greatness Movement based here in Phoenix, where we guide you to be the greatest version of yourself. We have a great show tonight. I don't know why I haven't done this before. I don't know. I'll be perfectly honest. I had no clue what I was going to talk about today. And I almost thought about canceling the show because I'm like, God, I'm running out of ideas. And I don't know, I think it was like 2:00. But see, I wrote a chapter in my book, my first book, Your Journey to Success, of how to let life come to you. You know, we've all been raised on what I call the Nike philosophy. Be a grinder, just do it, right? It doesn't work. You have to let life come to you. And so, generally when I come up with these shows, sometimes it's right after the show I have another idea, but a lot of times I don't know, and I don't spend any time thinking about it. Whenever I start to, I go lay by. That's why I'm always so tan. I go lay by my pool. I do nothing. I do the exact opposite of being a grinder and just doing it. Well, at any rate, at some point today, actually, I was at the gym and got to talking with somebody, and it just clicked. Oh my God, I'm going to talk about online dating profiles. See, I have a lot of clients that they're single and they bring in their profiles and ask me to analyze them, because I can look at pictures and I can feel what's going on in people. And then you put in, the different types of pictures that they use, whatever their words may be. And in many cases, I've had clients where I kind of tell them, the life story of somebody that they've been on one or two dates with, and they're like, Jesus, how do you know? And I'm like, well, do you see this and this and this? And so I show them, basically I accelerate their dating process of, here's how you can look at a profile and know right away if this is somebody you want to date or not. So if you know anybody who's single out there, who's sick and tired of flipping through dating profiles all the time and going on terrible dates, please share this show, whether you're listening on Spreaker or iTunes, whether you're watching live on Facebook or YouTube. Please let your single friends know to tune into this. Now, I have to have a disclaimer here. All I'm giving you tonight are basics, okay? There are going to be some things in here that, with every profile, there's subtleties. So somebody may have, some of the things I'm going to describe, you may hear this in yourself, but it may not completely, apply to you. And you're going to don't get all defensive and write me mean messages and go, that's not true. Each individual profile has its own unique milieu and feeling to it and everything. But these are generalizations that more often than not are true. Okay. It doesn't mean every time they're true, but these are key indicators. Okay. So please, I'm probably going to have to say this 100 times, because even when I say things like this, I get, I do random videos or something and people blow up. What are you saying? And I'm like, watch the video, listen to all of it. So we have such a short attention span nowadays, or someone's going to tune in the middle and go, what the heck? So at any rate, these are generalizations. These are not concrete facts. I would need you to bring in, the pictures and the profile of someone you're dating or someone you're interested in, to then show you how to filter down all these different key indicators so you can do what I do and literally look at a profile on Facebook or Bumble or Match, and with very high levels of certainty, you know exactly who this person is, and you don't even have to meet them if you don't want to. Well, a lot of my clients, they would go meet them just to find out, and they're like, Jesus, you're right. It's hysterical. So at any rate, let's get into it. Once again, disclaimer, these are generalities, so don't get defensive, all right? Because you're going to hear some generalities that probably speak to you, and that you maybe go, feel like I'm judging you. That's the other thing I want to get across. None of these are negative judgments, okay? None of these are somebody's bad in any way. The bottom line is this: every single one of us has been raised to be codependent. It's the parenting model that we've all experienced. At the very least is codependent. At the very worst, massively codependent. All right. What that means is we all fall on a scale of either more of a love addict or more of a love avoidant. Those are consequences of codependency. So when I describe those dynamics, if you've never heard those terms before, go to my YouTube channel or scroll through my Facebook page or Spreaker, scroll through episode lists. I've talked about all of those dynamics in depth in the past. Okay. I'm not going to get into all of that tonight. It would take too long. But if you want the basic background of what a love addict is, what a codependent is, what a love avoidant is, I already have done those shows. Okay. So I'm assuming you're a loyal watcher and you're already familiar with all of this stuff. Okay. So where do we start? Well, one of the first things to pick up on is animals. Okay. If you see a profile of somebody with lots of animals, or they talk about their animals a lot, what that will tell you is more often than not, they are in a primary relationship with the animal, and you will always play second fiddle. I'll never forget a guy, a client of mine, dating, and he brought me this picture. He'd gone out with this girl. I can't remember if it was once or twice. Gorgeous woman, very sweet. You could see it all through. You could see it in her eyes. It just dripped off of her. He brought me the profile, and I went, well, how do you feel about always being her mistress? And he's like, what do you mean? And I said, well, you will never be her husband or her boyfriend. She's in a primary relationship with her dog. You will always come second to the dog. And he's like, what do you mean? How do you know? Well, there were things she had written in her profile, the pictures and everything. So he was like, no, she hasn't even brought up her dog or anything. That's not true. And I'm like, okay. I said, the next time you go out with her, find some way to start talking about the dog. And anyway, the next week, I think they'd gone to dinner or something like that. The next appointment, he comes in, and he's just got this big smile on his face, and he's like, how did you know? I'm like, what do you mean? What are you talking about? I'd forgotten all about it. And he goes, the girl and stuff. He goes, we went out, and I started talking about animals. And he said, my counselor, my coach, brought up that people who have a real strong connection to their animals have a very difficult time connecting to another human being in a primary relationship because they're already in one. And he said, she just exploded. That's not true. I would never choose my dog over another person ever. That would never happen. And he's like, oh, okay. And so anyway, it opened the door to this discussion about dogs. And so she started asking him, well, my dog has separation anxiety. So how would you feel if we went on vacations and the dog came with us? And he's like, well, I guess I'd have to meet the dog, but it seems like a great idea. And she's like, and my dog has to sleep with me. My dog is always in the bed, and sometimes right up next to my head. Is that an issue for you? And he's like, well, honestly, I don't really want to cuddle with a dog. I'd rather cuddle with you. We're not at that place, but that's what I'd rather do, is cuddle with the woman in my life. And she's like, well, I don't know if this will work. I mean, my dog has to be in my bed. And they ended the date right there. It's absolutely hysterical. And this is what I find too with people who have strong attachments to their animals. You'll bring it up that somebody who has that, the reason they have it is because they have intimacy issues. Because an attachment with an animal, it's always one direction. They never have to give. You just walk in the door and they're all over you, right? No matter how poorly you treat them, they're always there for you. That's why people are so attached to animals now. If you've noticed with the explosion of internet and texting, this craze, people who are younger wouldn't know this, but people in my generation would recognize that the whole animal market has exploded. Well, as we become more detached emotionally, that's why people are gravitating towards animals. It's a safe, emotional, one-way connection. And she was living proof of it. She ended the date, ended the beginnings of a blossoming relationship because he was not willing to share the bed with her dog. Just like I said, he would always be a mistress to that animal. And so he learned really quickly. If you want, now there are many couples. That's not a bad thing that she had, basically a primary relationship with the dog. There are many couples that the dog is, that's what brings them together, or cat, whatever it may be. They bond over both of them using the animal as a surrogate emotional blanket to keep them from having to connect with each other. So it can be a wonderful way for people to come together. That's why I'm saying none of this is negative or a judgment that it's bad to have animals. What this tells you, what I'm trying to help you see is, what kind of relationship do you want? Do you want it primarily focused on animals or the other person? Well, if you want it with another person, if you see profiles where everything is about their animals, this person isn't available to you. Most likely, again, generalities, but more often than not, this person is not capable of a deep emotional connection. Okay? So there's the one about animals to keep an eye out for. Now, what about family? If you see, and both men and women do this, they'll say things like, oh, my kids are my world. My kids come before anything, and I'll do anything for my kids. Well, that's a sign, again, they're in a primary relationship with their children. Now, it's wonderful for us to love our kids, but those are signs of massive codependence and something called NEN, meshment. Enmeshment. Again, I've done shows on that before. If you haven't, if that's a new term for you, just scroll through my show list. And so their primary attachment is to their children, and they will choose their kids before anything. Well, that's not healthy, actually. Our kids need to learn what's called intradependence, not codependence. That's what breeds it. Most of us, a mother or father has reached down and emotionally over-connected to us in an improper way. There's a right and wrong way to attach to a child and create what's called attunement. That dynamic is the exact opposite. I don't have time. I know there are a lot of you out there listening. You love your kids and you're going, what? You're telling me I'm wrong if I love my kids? That's not what I'm saying. Again, go watch previous shows so you can learn the difference between codependence, enmeshment, and true healthy attachment and attunement. Okay. Most of us, very, very few of us, know anything about healthy attachment and attunement. What we're all pursuing is codependence and enmeshment. And so that's something to keep an eye out for. I'll never forget a female client of mine. She brought in 3 dating profiles. She was heavily attracted to narcissists, just blatant narcissist. And the reason we're attracted to things like this is because of our own childhood. Anyway, she showed me one, and she's like, this guy isn't. Like, we'd worked together for a couple of years. She had gone through a lot of her stuff. She's like, this guy isn't. I can tell. Do you see his eyes? Like, she had learned how to read profiles, and she goes, but there's something here. I'm not sure what it is. And I said, how often does he talk to his mother? She looks at me and her eyes like, she goes, every day. I said, and he makes all of his decisions with his mother, right? Like, he has to check in with her before he makes decisions, right? She's like, uh-huh. And, like, her eyes are getting big. And finally I showed her, I asked her a couple more questions in connection to his mother. Finally, I showed her one of his Facebook pictures. There was a picture of him with his mother, and this man's in his mid to late 30s, and he has his head laying on his mom's shoulder. He looked about 6 years old. He was a little boy who had never grown up and separated from his mother. And that's why he was so attached to her, in his mid 30s, single, never married, because he was married to his mother. And that's why. And so all he was looking for was a mother. There was another woman who brought in a Bumble profile. She brought in 3 of them. And this one guy, very buff, bodybuilder, kind of not biker, but I think he had a bike. What looked like to be a very manly man, okay? But I could see it in his eyes. And I said, what is it you like about this guy? And she said, well, he's very sweet. He's very kind. He's much more of a love addict than a love avoidant. And I said, yeah, but he wants you to be his mother. Are you okay with that? Do you want to be the mother to him? And her eyes just about dropped out. And she goes, oh my God, you know what he does? Every once in a while, like randomly, out of the blue, like the last time we went to dinner, he just drops into this little voice and turns and he just says something like a little 6-year-old, this little high squeaky voice. Like this guy was huge, but I could see, like when you do this long enough, I've also just been able to feel what's going on in people. It's like so obvious. This guy was a little boy who wanted a mommy. Now that's not bad. Part of why she's attracted to him, like we talked about it, she loves to be a nurturer and caretaker. And I said, well, he could be perfect for you because you get to be his little mommy, which sounds like you love. Okay. So again, it's not a bad thing, but this is the advantage of learning about these dynamics. You can instantly look at pictures and words people choose and know right away, oh my God, this man or woman needs a mommy or a daddy. They're perfect for me. Versus someone who's the complete opposite, very independent, and you're like, I don't want that. Okay. That's one of the advantages. Another thing to pay attention to is fitness. Bodybuilders, fitness competitors, people that are heavy into fitness. When it comes to the competitor side, over 90% of them, it's very rare that any of them have not suffered sexual or physical abuse. That's why they're competing. That's why they're doing it. They're trying to get themselves big as a protection mechanism. Again, I know there's lots of people that are into fitness and you're going, I was never abused. This isn't me. I said over 90%, not every single person. But the studies and the correlations are off the charts. People that are heavy into fitness, more often than not, they've been sexually abused or physically abused mostly in childhood, sometimes after. Okay. Sometimes it can happen in their 20s, and that's the trigger that makes them become a competitor. Now, again, this isn't a bad thing. All of us have been through, at the very least, insults, irresponsible parenting, or trauma. So this could be a bonding thing. This could be something you're looking for. So you may not have turned your abuse into fitness. You may do it differently. But if you want to feel safe, knowing, wait a minute, we have a shared history, a fitness person could be a great connection for you. Okay? Men, sorry, women, I'm going to throw you under the bus here. This is another thing I've noticed. Men generally go to a woman's last picture on her profile. That's usually the most current, especially when it comes to their weight and their look. Okay? You'll see it. It happens all the time. 5 pictures on a profile, and as you go through the pictures, they look different, and they usually start to get heavier. I haven't noticed the same phenomena in men, but I see it in women's profiles all the time. And usually the last picture ends up being what they most likely resemble, but they're kind of hiding it, okay, until the end. All right. So that's something to keep an eye out. Men, make sure you go to all the pictures, and not always, but more often than not, the last picture is the most accurate. Okay. Also, just when it comes to pictures, people, if you have any picture that's more than 3 months old, you're hiding. You're hiding. Okay. Your self esteem you're struggling with, and you don't want someone to quite see who you are. And again, that's a generality. Some people don't ever take pictures, that's all they have. But if you have a picture that's more than 6 years, 6 months old on your profile, that's a massive red flag. Okay. So keep that in mind just for yourselves. Okay. Because here's what you have to realize: if it's older than that and you go on a date, you are setting yourself up for rejection. Why would you do that? Any picture that's especially 1, 3, God, my ex-wife, my first wife after our divorce, she put up on her Match profile, she cut me out of the picture and put up a picture of her from our wedding rehearsal 12 years earlier. Like, she didn't look anything like that. Well, when you're doing that, you're just setting yourself up for rejection. Okay. It's also very manipulative and narcissistic to ask somebody to accept, because I've had women do that. I went on a date once. A woman, her profile said, I think she was 34 or 36. When I showed up, she was in her 60s. Incredibly elegant, gorgeous, but she was in her 60s. Now, she was very kind and nice. I'm like, geez, what else am I going to do? Like, I didn't take offense to it. We spent like 2 hours walking around, just coffee shops and stuff. It was a great conversation, but there was no way in hell I was ever going to date this woman, because you didn't just lie. You lied by 30 years. That tells me everything I need to know about you. Even though she was stunning, she was very pleasant, but you have already shown me how big of a liar you are. I don't need to know any more intimate details about you. You've shown me who you are. And so think of that. If you're the type with old pictures, or someone shows up like that and the pictures are not accurate, their weight or whatever is off, right there, this person is a liar. Okay. So think, some people love to date liars. They love the excitement. If you like liars, great. Keep your mouth shut, have a blast. If you don't, well, now you know. All right. You can enjoy the evening, but just never see them again. All right. Another thing you see a lot of are tattoos. Tattoos have become the newest way we express our emotional pain and difficulties. Just ask anyone about their tattoo. Not all, but almost all tattoos have a story of pain and tragedy. All right. So because we don't teach how to deal with our emotional trauma, people sticker it on themselves to try and process it out that way. I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm just saying that's why people do it. Every single tattoo, whether it's happy, sad, whatever, it always has an emotional story. That's why they're doing it. So if you like a tattooed person, ask them about their tattoos. You'll find out their whole trauma history. You can decide if that's the type of trauma you like in your life or not. Okay? One of the downsides to tattoos and people that have them is they haven't done the work. They're trying to medicate away the trauma through the tattoo. Not all of them, but most of them. So that can be a red flag if you're someone like me who likes somebody to become an expert in their imperfections and their struggles in life. You may be the opposite type and like, nope, I don't ever want to talk about my pain. Don't ever want to deal with it. Well, someone with tattoos could be perfect for you, because more often than not, they're not working through their pain either, and it's showing up all over their body. But that's as deep as they'll go. So it's perfect. Okay. Now, if you see a profile like mine, lots of smiles. Most of my pictures are lots of smiles. Well, that's because I'm primarily a love addict. All right. It's a spectrum. People usually have a little bit of both. I have avoidant in me. Generally in a relationship, I start out avoidant and I switch to addict. Once they like me, I switch to addict. But I'm primarily love addict. So lots of smiles. All right. That's almost 100% dead giveaway. Somebody with lots of smiles is a love addict. Somebody that very cold face, or women do the tilted sexy eye look, but straight faced, massive love avoidance. They're using sex to entice you. Okay. But trust me, is the relationship goes on, they'll withdraw the sex. That's what love avoidance do. They come on, well, female love avoidance come on heavy sexually, lots of innuendo, lots of flirt and everything. And the relationship might start heavily sexual, but eventually they withdraw the sex because love avoidance, it's all about power. And so women with really sexy pictures, bikini pictures, lots of sexualized photos, more often than not, they are love avoidance using their sexual prowess to draw you in. It's a power dynamic. Not saying it's bad, but it's something to think about, okay? That was part of what tipped me off with the big burly guy. He just smile, smile, smile. I'm like, this guy's a massive love addict. And that's why he wanted a mommy, okay? Not every love addict wants a mommy. I'm just, again, there are subtleties when you have, I need a profile in front of me to break it all down. I'm just giving you generalities, all right? Another, if you want to find out if someone's a love addict, another thing is they will be quick to respond to your messages and text messages. Their profiles will be long, lots of words. Their text messages will be lots of words. When you're ending a conversation, they will keep replying. If you say thank you, they'll say no, thank you. You're welcome. And they'll just keep then they'll do a smiley face. They will keep finding a way to respond. They are overly nice, like nice, nice, nice. Lots of the niceness is a manipulation, but that someone who's very talkative and engaged is more often than not mostly a love addict. You can have very codependent love avoidance, but more often than not, that's a love addict. All right. Love avoidance, complete opposite. One word answers, very short profiles, very vague because it's a power position. They don't want you to know a lot about them. They're sporadic in their replies, whether it's their email reply, their text message reply. They'll disappear in the middle of a conversation with no warning. See, a love addict will let you know, oh, I'm stepping into a meeting, can't respond. A love avoidant, they'll disappear for 3 days and go, what? What's the big deal? Like, I got busy. They didn't. Nobody's ever busy. It's a choice. They just blew you off. But that's part of the power dynamic. Okay. Now, maybe the reason to learn this stuff, like that's part of what I take into account when I look at these profiles. What are the words they're using? How many words? How few words? All of this stuff. What are their pictures? Is it a man, with glasses on all the time? Red flag. Man or woman, lots of glasses, pictures. They're hiding. They don't want you to see their eyes. The eyes are the window to their soul. If they're not showing you those, they don't want you to see their soul. Like some of this stuff is just blatantly obvious. If they have lots of pictures with the opposite sex, well, I think you know what that means. Okay. Now that's the other thing. You'll see that people do pictures with everyone's a bunch of friends. And you're like, who's the person in the profile here? Or they'll have a friend who's more attractive. First of all, put ugly friends next to you, people. Like, come on. I mean, think about that. But that's just a sidebar. But if they have lots of friends, again, they're trying to hide in a sea of people. They're afraid to stand out and claim who they are. Okay. Not saying that's good or bad. You may be the exact same way. Could be a perfect fit for you. But those are things to pay attention to. All right. Obviously, the gym selfie guy, well, we all know who that is. All right. I don't really have to, some of these things I don't have to get into. All right. We all know those things. But yeah, love avoidance will ghost you. They'll disappear in the middle of a conversation. They'll tend to withhold information. So they won't let you know that they're about to get busy because they have to keep that power. Love addicts, they will meet you right away. Like the second we trade emails, let's meet. Like, let's not waste time. Love avoidance are always, oh, I'm just too busy. Well, I'm sorry, you're on a dating profile or dating thing and you're not ready to meet for 2 weeks. Like, get off. You have no interest. See, that's the power dynamic. That's the problem with love avoidance. They're never in the relationship. And so that, I mean, they're extenuating circumstances. Maybe they've been on the site for a couple months. They've had a trip planned. That happens. But more often than not, you'll see a love avoidant. They have nothing planned. They'll just say, oh, next weekend. Well, I'm just too tired during the week. You know, they're just too busy. I have too much going on. Well, if you're too busy, you can't be dating. Dating takes a commitment. You know, if you're actually actively pursuing a relationship, you have to decide, I'm going to make myself available to create one. Love avoidants don't want to do that. Love addicts do. And that's why, you know, they're so responsive and all of this stuff, because their primary fear is abandonment. And so that's why they're so eager. They're feeling, you know, they don't want to feel that sense of abandonment. Okay. As I said earlier, men use highly sexualized pictures too. That's the gym selfie. But men will also use cars, their boats, things like that. You know, they're trying to puff up, you know, their intellect or different things. That can be a characteristic of a love avoidant. Okay. It's giving you this false power image. They're a rescuer. You know, for a love addict woman who's fantasized about this perfect man who will never, you know, abandon her, she's picturing some wealthy intellect, whatever it may be, you know, this superhero. Conversely, like I fantasized as a kid, you know, this stunning woman who just, you know, I like Wonder Woman, you know, so that's why you would gravitate towards somebody who's has a highly sexualized profile. Okay, I don't know if that's good or bad. You get to decide if that's good or bad. But I'm just letting you know these are key indicators. Another thing is their careers. All right, I wrote about this in my book. I don't have time to get into exactly how all this works, but careers. Real estate, that lets you know their childhood was incredibly chaotic because the process of buying and selling homes is incredibly chaotic. They're reliving it. Someone who's in sales, very low self-esteem, okay? They were not esteemed as a child, probably lots of shame, because think about it, in any sales dynamic, no matter what you sold today, tomorrow you start at zero. Well, that's literally what a childhood dynamic is like that's filled with shame. You can never get approval. Okay. That's why people gravitate towards sales. Finance, there were always money issues in the house. Teachers, someone who's a teacher of some sort, they had to parent their parents. I mean, that's what I had to do. So, you know, someone who does my profession, well, look, I mean, those of you who've read my book or watched my show, I've been through massive trauma. All right. And my job was always to take care of other people. The other problem is my job was to sit and listen to everybody. Well, I do many of those same things right now in this job, but as I talk about, this is the only career I've ever picked in my life. They were always picked for me. And the biggest difference, the reason this career actually works for me, not against me, is, again, I was never allowed to speak or share my thoughts and emotions. Well, look, you're listening. People pay to actually hear what I have to think and say. For the first time in my life, my trauma is working for me. There's a reason. Gallup has done a poll for decades. Only 7% of the population is satisfied with their career. 7%. That means 93% are miserable. Well, that's what I wrote about in my book. That's because all we're ever doing is reliving our trauma against ourselves. That's why hockey, construction, golf, all of those never worked for me and just were destroying me, because they were a byproduct of unresolved trauma in my childhood. Once I went and cleaned that up, I found my calling. I found my authenticity. Well, 93% of the population hasn't read my book. So they don't know that the careers they've chosen, whether it's a real estate agent, sales, ghostwriter, pick your career, they're just reliving their trauma against them. Now, again, I'm not saying anyone in these careers is bad. I'm not saying you should stay away from them. I'm just giving you an indicator. So these are things I look at it. And when you know how all of this works, then you can look at a picture like I do and go, oh, I know exactly almost exactly what it'd be like to date this person. Do I like that or not? It's simple, but we don't teach this stuff. So again, disclaimer, these are generalities. If you've heard things about yourself that maybe don't apply to you, great. I would bring your own profile in, set up an appointment, and I'll walk you through how all of this works and how your profile is showing people all of these characteristics in yourself, or vice versa. If you want to know how to read profiles, go ahead and set up an appointment. But there are some quick tips. If you know somebody who's single and is struggling with the process, please share this video with them. Get them some help so that they can start picking better. If you need resources to understand love addiction, codependence, love avoidance, so you know nobody should ever go on a date without reading Pia Melody's Facing Love Addiction. So that's a resource for you. My book is a resource for you. My videos are a resource for you. Every book ever written by Pia Melody is a resource for you. If you need more, please get in touch. Send me an email. I'm happy to send you in the direction of resources so you can start picking better partners and people that actually want to be in a relationship with you and will fit with you. All right. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Hope you enjoyed it. Remember, whenever we judge, blame, or criticize, the only reason we're doing that is because we see something in the other person that we haven't reconciled in ourselves. It's actually judgment, blame, and criticism of ourselves. We haven't done the work and we haven't forgiven ourselves. Now, the opposite of that is true. Also, when you see greatness in somebody else, the only reason you can see it is because you have that greatness as well. Now, if you're not living in that greatness, if you don't feel like that person, if you don't feel you're living your life like that person does in their greatness, and you want help with that, that's what the Greatness Movement is about. Get in touch, www.thegreatnessmovement.com. Have a great night, everybody. We'll see you next week.